Hey guys, Stickbow Fit Mama here, and today we're going to discuss the most common terminology used to describe traditional bows. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and just use my recurve because it's a little bit shorter and just easier to view. But at the end of my video, I'm also going to go over the difference in takedown bows. Know that this is a one-piece bow, so there is a little bit of changes if you were to get yourself a takedown. And we'll log that at the end. But the very first thing we're going to discuss is the riser. Now, the riser is this center part here in the bow. It is where the archer will hold the bow in his hand. And it also is where the limbs, which are these outer edges, connect to the grip, is what most people will call it. Know that the right terminology for this is the riser. Now, there are all different sorts of designs for these risers, and mine is kind of unique because Black Widow makes what's called a Toby grip, and it's the same as my longbow, which is what I like. They're very interchangeable, these two bows now. But depending on this is what can really affect an archer's ability to hold it correctly. I have smaller hands, or so for kids starting out young, you want to make sure that they have a bow that fits their hand well, because for me, what really deterred me from shooting recurve was the riser was so big in my hand that I was constantly, when I would release, the tension was causing my hand to kind of jerk off to the right. And so that's where I found my love for longbows. But play with the riser. That can definitely be something. If you're not shooting well and you typically do and it's a different bow, it could be that the riser just doesn't fit right in your hand. It's not a matter of just being too big. It can also just not fit right. Maybe it's too small. I do, my grandpa has a couple bows that I love by Tolkien, but for some reason, the way that the riser fits in my hand, it's really close to the shelf. My hand is constantly hitting the arrow and I just cannot shoot it well. And so don't be deterred if, the riser doesn't fit. There's a lot of bows out there, so give it a shot. Maybe pick up a longbow. But the next thing we kind of touched base on was the limbs. Now, the limbs are the upper and lower part of the bow that extend outward from the riser. And they're flexible, which this bow is strung right now. But when it's not strung, you'll see that this is actually flat. The curve is when when the string is strung. Wow, that's a tongue twister. But these are usually made out of very durable material and different types of wood. Risers can be made out of, again, different types of wood, and you'll often see them sometimes like this will be, there's a lot of different materials out there, and we can kind of touch base on that in a different video, but my longbow is kind of unique because I need to get it redone really bad, but I have diamondback skin on the outside of my limbs, but you can see that I still have the gray bark as my actual limb material. Now, the nice thing with these is they can be refinished, and a lot of times if you are handed down a bow, depending on who made them, like Black Widow's really good about it. They can, and Tolkien, I'll say that. Those are the bows I'm most common with. That's the only reason I keep referring to them. There are tons of amazing bows out there. Those are just the two I'm most common with, or familiar with, excuse me. But you can typically get them to shave some, say 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds off of it. That is where you're going to get a lot of your poundage out of a bow. Now, we will go over this in another video, but you'll see on the inside of your limbs, typically there's a bunch of different markings. So this one has an item number to it. It says it's the PSR2. It will say its length. So mine says 58 inches, and it has 50 number sign, which is 50 pounds at 27 inches. Now that is your draw length, and we'll go ahead and talk about draw lengths and how you can find yours in another video. But your draw length will determine what the poundages of the bow that you're pulling, if that makes sense. So my draw length is 28 inches. This is 50 at 27. So I'm really shooting 53 because I have an extra inch, which usually adds about 3 extra pounds. Now, that's a pretty common thing throughout most bows. You should have some type of markings on the inside to be able to tell you its length and the poundage at what draw length. So that's something to look for on your limbs. The next thing that we're going to have is our string. Now, there are all different types of string. Black Widows is black and red, which I love. I love the accents of red, and usually my arrows are neon pink and red to tie in. But I have some silencers on these. What that will help is with the sound of when you release your arrow, it will quiet the sound, but it also helps with the vibration that can cause hand shock. So these are completely up to you. My grandpa even makes these cute pom-pom ones out of yarn. Like, I'm not kidding. Obviously, I like having the widows on here. Even my 4-year-old son's bow has widows on it. It's pretty cute. But I can tell a huge difference in these. People, I can't tell you how many times they say, wow, those bows are so quiet. Granted, it's a very high quality bow, but it also has silencers on it. So that helps. Now, the next thing we should talk about is your nocking point. Now, to familiarize yourself, a nock is this part at the end of an arrow. It has this little clip. This is incredibly crucial that you have a nock that fits tightly on your string. You should feel a click or kind of some tension. It should be harder for you to pull it off. The reason that that is so important is the worst thing that you can do. Let me say it again. The worst thing you can do is dry fire your bow. Dry firing means that you pull your bow back and you let go with no arrow on it. That will, I know of stories where they have shattered in people's hands. They've shattered in people's faces. It's incredibly dangerous and it's incredibly bad for your bow. So don't do it. And why I say the nock is important is because you have to think, if this isn't tight on your string there, and it's happened to me, it's like so freaky when it happens too. But you'll have this nocked and you'll have it ready to go. And you'll pull back, and right when you get ready to release, it'll clip off. And you're like, whoa, and you bring it back in and you're like, oh my gosh, that would have been so bad. And I'm not gonna lie, I have dry fired before where it has fallen off, and I look my bow over and I'm like, oh my gosh, I make sure the fiber, like, nothing is bad, there's no splinters, and it's very, very, very important. So with that being said, your nocking point on your bows, this one's an easier one to see, for example, is this right here. So what it is it's a spot where your arrow will sit. The arrow nock helps with this angle. Now, depending on the angle of how your arrow sits on the arrow shelf, also known as the arrow rest, I've always called it a shelf. This angle, I know there's some scientific meaning and how it all fits, and that's how you dry fire a bow. My nock is not very tight. But with that being said, this format helps with accuracy. So holding this here, the shelf helps with accuracy, and it helps stabilize the arrow. Now, like I mentioned in another video, there are different bows. There's more of like a horse or a D bow, where this shelf is minimal, like very, very none. We'll put it that way. You'll find that long bows usually have smaller shelves, and recurves typically have larger ones. Mine don't really differ because they're the same grip and the same riser. But with that being said, those are the most important things you need to know when it comes to terminology for your bow. There are definitely accessories and different things that you can have. I have different, this is a bow quiver. So my arrows go on this and it clips onto the limbs. But see, you needed to know what limbs were. And depending on how you pull back your bow, I've always shot with a glove since I was little. This is what I'm familiar with. But there's also tabs, and I have tried tab shooting. I am definitely a glove girl. But you will use those to protect your fingers, especially the higher the poundage, the harder it is on your fingers. But depending on what you shoot there, that also kind of helps hold in at your nocking point. There are different people who shoot differently based on their nocking point. Some might shoot split finger, some might shoot, when I say that, your nocking point is, I'm sorry, your nocking point is here. I split these. My index finger is above my nocking point and my 2 are below my nocking point. That is called split finger. Some people will shoot 3 fingers under. I'm sure there's other ways. Those are the 2 I'm most common with. This right here is another accessory. This is really nice for hunting. What it is pretty much you can put your it's fit for a broadhead, and this will fit right in there, so you can always have one arrow even without having one of the larger arrow quivers on there. Another one that I have is really cool is this. So when you knock your arrow in here, when you're in your tree stand, this little flap I have, see how it will hold my arrow in place for me, so I'm not constantly having to hold it. It will hold it, and then as soon as you draw all the way back, you can see it releases. So it's a cool feature by far. But other than that, there are these end grips that I recommend getting for your bow. They help protect the tips of your, this is for just the one end, the bottom lower end. The top end can't be covered because that's how you de-string your bow. That is going to be the next most important thing. Number 1, don't dry fire. Number 2, always, always, always de-string your bow, especially a wood bow. It is incredibly important when you're done shooting them, unstring them. It's really bad on the limbs. I've known a lot of people who don't unstring their bows. It's fine. But especially when you get these really nice high-end custom bows, you want to make sure that you're de-stringing your bow every time. And with that, I mean, there's different stringers too. So like this is the one that I use for my recurve. This goes on the protected tip end, like I told you, and I'll do another video on this. But this sits on the limb, and then we pull the tension, blah, 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 unstring the bow, we'll go over it. This one's different. This one I use on my longbow. Same thing at this end goes here, but this little piece, the tip, fits right in this instead of having it on the limbs. So this is the best type of, based on my opinion, this is the best type and the safest type of de-stringer that they have. Black Widow makes that one. But I mean, there's people who de-string their bows with their feet, and it's an option, but highly recommend against it. Anyways, thank you guys for following. I hope that you guys enjoyed that and found something useful. If you guys have any questions about any other parts that I might have missed or want more clarification on something, please leave it in the comments below. I'd be happy to do another video and answer some of those questions. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.